Okay, welcome to Unit 2A. So this video is going to help you complete your notes on the very first page of your Unit 2A notes booklet or notes package. All right, so Unit 2A is all about historical globalization. Okay, that's the title of this unit, but it's also the title of Unit 2B. So Unit 2 is such a big unit. It covers so many topics that we found that students had a little bit of trouble with such a big unit. So we split it into two smaller units, Unit 2A and 2B. And so we're going to cover some history in this unit as well as the next unit. Okay, so units 2A and 2B have the same goal. The goal here is for students to understand the effects of historical globalization on both Indigenous people and also on non-Indigenous peoples. Okay, this will make sense to you as we get through the unit. So in this unit, it's going to be important for you to know a little bit of geography. Now, you do not need to know where every country of the world is located on the map, but if you want to do well in this unit, it will help you very much to know where the continents are and to know where the oceans are. So you can take a look at this map right here. This map is going to help you complete, I'll get that out of the way. It's going to help you complete the map that you have in your notes, right? So in your notes package, you have definitely noticed that you have this map right here, map of the world. I invite you to label the continents. If you're a fancy person, you can even pull out some crayons, right? Maybe some pencil crayons, color the different continents in different colors, right? If you want to have nice, beautiful notes, that's something you can do. But if not, if you're just like a straightforward person and you don't want any of that, well, then just label the continents, right? So we have North America, South America, Africa, Europe, Asia, Australia, Antarctica. I also want you to label the Middle East. The Middle East is a region, it's not a continent, but it will be important both for this unit, but also for your life to know where the Middle East is because it's an important place. I also want you to label the oceans, right? So we have the Atlantic Ocean, right? So you can label north and south if you want, or you can just make all of this Atlantic. The Indian Ocean's over here, Southern Ocean, Pacific Ocean. What else? Have we got the Arctic Ocean? Yes, we do, and the Southern Ocean. Get all of those oceans in there. Also label north, west, and south and east. Okay, if you want, you can even draw the equator, right? The equator runs down here. That could be a useful thing to have in your own personal map. Okay, so if you want, you can pause this video and you can label those continents and oceans and stuff, and then come back to the video once you're doing that, or once you're done doing that. All right, take a look at this globe. Uh, why do we have lines on the globe, right? Why do we have horizontal lines and vertical lines? Well, these are called latitudes and longitudes. And so these are used for creating GPS coordinates. So latitudes and longitudes, these are tools that are used by companies like Google, right? When they make Google Maps. If you've ever used Google Maps, every location on that map has a designated latitude and longitude. So this helps us get around the world, right? This is our way of creating maps. It's our way of creating directions, pretty much everything. Like we do a lot using latitudes and longitudes. I want you to draw just a couple or a few longitudes, right? So the longitudes run vertically, right, from north to south. Draw a few longitudes on your map in your notes, and then draw a few latitudes, right? So if you drew the equator, well, the equator is already one latitude, right? So that's at 0 degrees, right, in the center of the Earth. Yeah. So go ahead and just draw a few latitudes and a few longitudes because that's going to be important also for this unit. You want to know what those are because they will help you understand some important concepts. What else we got? Oh, yeah. So you will notice that underneath your map, you have a horizontal line. That is a little timeline. Okay, so you've got a couple of timelines. Here, maybe I'll show you where they are. Here is the first one right here. This is the one that you're using right now. Okay, so that is a little timeline. where you are going to label a few things. So in the center, you don't have to put all of this, by the way. If you want, you can just put a little line in the center of your timeline, and then maybe put 500 years, 1,000 years, 1,500 years. This year is like the year one, okay? All of the years before the year one are often referred to as BC or BCE. So we used to use the term BC a lot more, okay? Because it was believed that this was roughly the year that Jesus was born. As it turns out, historians were off by a few years, but it's pretty close, okay? So it's pretty close to the year that Jesus was born. So we used to call these years before Christ, right? So 500 years before Christ, 1,000 years before Christ, 1,500 years before Christ, right? And so we would use the acronym. Is that an acronym? Yes, it is. Acronym BC, right? So 500 BC, 1,000 BC, 1,500 BC. But lately, we are moving away from BC, and we're starting to use BCE a little bit more, okay? Before the Common Era. So just make sure you've got like the years, and then also that you've marked down BC and BCE. All right, just to give you an idea of like, we call those years, before Christ or before the Common Era, depending on who you're talking to. Now, after Jesus' birth, we call these years AD, right? Or we have called it AD for a long time, right? So right now, today we are in the year 2022 AD, right? So the year 2022, Anno Domini, which means year of the Lord. All right. Well, people seem to be moving away from AD and starting to use CE, Common Era, right? We're calling this the Common Era. Okay, so I want you to be aware of those because you're going to encounter those throughout this unit. Okay, what's next? Globalization. Ooh, we went a few minutes without talking about globalization. Let's never do that again. Okay, so globalization is something you learned a lot about in Unit 1. And you're going to keep learning about it every day. It's great. So it's the process by which people around the world are becoming more and more interconnected and more interdependent. But the question here is, when did globalization begin, right? When did we go from having no globalization to all of a sudden living in a world that is globalized? When did that happen? Which year was it? Well, the answer is experts disagree, right? So if you talk to different historians, they will give you different answers, right? So that's not very helpful, is it? So for the sake of this course, we are going to talk about globalization as a process, right? It is a process that has been happening for a very, very long time, right? So for a long time, the world has slowly and progressively become more and more globalized. And so globalization has evolved. And so we're going to talk about 3 different rounds of globalization: the first round, second round, and third round. That'll be our way of separating the history. So the first round of globalization is the time period before the year 1492, right? Oh, I probably should have put 1492 CE, but anyway, whatever. All right, before 1492. All right, so before the year 1492, there were some forms of connections between different groups of people, right? So goods and ideas were usually traded along some ancient trade routes in most regions of the world. People did business with each other. People bought and sold things with each other. However, these trade routes were not yet global. They did not involve all continents of the world, like in today's world, right? You think about world trade today, countries buy and sell things from each other all the time across the planet. However, during the first round of globalization, it was a little bit more local, right? And one example that we're going to talk about in this unit is the Silk Road. That was from the first round of globalization. All right. I'm not sure why I put this map there. Okay, second round. That one started in 1492. So obviously 1492 is an important year for some reason. All right, we'll see why. And it continues until 1945. 1945 is another important year, obviously. And we'll talk about why that is too. So the second round of globalization has a name. We refer to this second round of globalization as historical globalization. All right, that is sort of like the title of the second round. All right, so this is a time period during which Europeans developed some new technologies that allowed them to travel to other continents and conquer other peoples, meaning that they had weapons and they went to the land of other people and they took the land away from those people and took their resources. This was a time of imperialism and colonialism. Right? This is a time of conquest. All right. And so all of that is the second round of globalization. Europeans built big empires and they had colonies around the world. We're going to spend most of our time in Unit 2 talking about this second round of globalization. Okay. And during this time period, the world was becoming more and more interconnected, mostly because of colonialism, mostly because of imperialism. Okay. And then we get the third round. And that one is the one we are living in today. It begins in 1945 with the end of World War II, and it continues until today. And we call this one contemporary globalization. So the word contemporary means like now, right? Today, current, right? Modern. That's contemporary. Okay, so you guys know what this round of globalization is like because you live in it. We have global communication happening very quickly. People are traveling all around the world in short periods of time. There's lots of trade between all countries of the world, for the most part. So that is the third round. So you can see how in the first round of globalization, we only get like just a little bit of globalization happening, and it's not even fully global, right? But then we get down to the second round, and now we're seeing that countries are more connected to each other, mostly through imperialism. And then by the third round of globalization, it really accelerates, and we see a lot more interconnectedness, a lot more interdependency. All right, you have one more timeline at the bottom of your notes. So if you're looking at your notes, and I hope you are, you go to the bottom and you see there's one more timeline down there. Here we're going to map out the 3 rounds of globalization. Okay, so you can draw some little vertical lines in your timeline here. Try to make them at roughly the same points that I did on the screen here. So you can mark down 1492. 1492 is an important year. Has anybody guessed why? Well, I can't hear you, so I don't know. That was a really important year because there was a guy with some other guys who traveled from Europe in a boat across the Atlantic Ocean, made his way here to the Americas, landed in the Caribbean islands here in the Americas, met some local indigenous people, and then traveled back to Europe. And then ever since that year, there have been many, many boats going back and forth across this Atlantic Ocean between Europe and the Americas. What was the name of the guy who did this in 1492? His name was Christopher Columbus. So 1492 is an important year because these two parts of the world that used to be completely separate from each other, all of a sudden are now in regular contact with each other, right? So people in the Americas, they had no idea that Europe and Asia and Africa existed. And then people in Europe, Asia, and Africa, they had no idea that the Americas existed. So as soon as they make contact with each other, that's an important year when it comes to globalization, right? And then 1945 is the next important year that you can mark down. That is the end of World War II. World War II comes to an end, and the countries who were the winners of World War II, they sort of created a new world order. And it led to a lot more globalization, a lot more free trade, a lot more travel between countries. So that, accelerates globalization. Okay, so all the years before 1492, you can mark that down as being the first round of globalization. And then you can label the second round of globalization being between 1492 and 1945. And then finally, mark down the third round of globalization as being this most recent round. Okay, and you can label the second round as being historical globalization. All right, there you go. So if you have done those things, then you will have fully completed all of your notes for the very first page. And I hope you learned a couple things. This was just an introduction to Unit 2A. And in the next video, you'll actually get into some of the real content from the unit. And I hope you enjoy it. I hope you learn some stuff.